The earliest version of the Bible, or one of the earliest, is in Ethiopia. What are the differences between that Bible and, let's say, like the King James?
Okay, and a couple things. The first, the Old Testament is the Torah from the Ethiopian Torah.
Wait,
Right.
the oldest Torah we have is also Ethiopian?
They will sell my image like merchants in a marketplace. They will trade my words like coins, and they will call this worship. That's not a critique of modern televangelism. That's not someone attacking megachurches or prosperity preachers. That's from a text claiming to record what Jesus said after the resurrection. Buried in Ethiopian monasteries for 2,000 years, while Western Christianity pretended it didn't exist. And it gets worse. There will come a day when people shout my name in the streets, but their hearts will be far from me. They will build massive temples of gold and stone, but forget the real temple, the human soul, 2,000 years ago, written on animal skin, copied by candlelight in churches carved into cliff faces. And it describes exactly what we see today. But here's the part that made me stop reading. Jesus doesn't just predict corruption. He predicts what happens to genuine believers in a corrupted system. Blessed are those who suffer for my name, not in word, but in silence. Not the ones making noise, not the ones with platforms and audiences, the silent ones, the forgotten ones, the ones nobody sees. These words sat in mountain churches while empires rose and fell. The Roman Church never included them. Protestant reformers never saw them. Billions of Christians lived and died without knowing this passage existed. But it survived, every single word. And when you read what else Jesus said during those 40 days between his resurrection and ascension, you start to understand why Rome wanted it gone. The Bible. Rome didn't want you to read. Here's something most Christians never learn. The Ethiopian Bible contains 81 books. The Protestant Bible has 66. That's 15 entire texts that Western Christianity decided you didn't need to read.
Stop reading the King James Bible. It's manipulated. It changed the words. You need to read the Ethiopian Bible.
The Ethiopian church never followed Rome's rules. They were isolated in the mountains, never colonized, never conquered, never forced to edit their beliefs. While councils in Rome and Constantinople argued about which books to keep and which to burn, Ethiopia simply preserved everything, including a book called the Meshafi Kidan, the Book of the Covenant. This is where the hidden passage lives, and what it contains reads less like ancient history and more like tomorrow's headlines. What Jesus actually said. The standard Gospels are almost silent about the 40 days between resurrection and ascension. Think about what that means. Jesus conquers death. He walks out of a tomb. He spends 6 full weeks with his closest disciples, the longest sustained teaching period recorded after any miracle in his ministry. What did he say? The Western Bible gives you almost nothing. A few appearances, a conversation on a road, some instructions about baptism, a breakfast on the beach. That's it. 40 days of teaching from the risen Son of God, and the official record is nearly blank. The Ethiopian Book of the Covenant fills that silence. And the Jesus who speaks in these pages isn't offering gentle parables about sheep and seeds. He's issuing warnings, prophecies, detailed descriptions of exactly how his own church would betray everything he came to teach. He gathers his disciples on a mountain. He tells them to spread his message. He promises the Holy Spirit will give them strength, standard stuff. Then his tone shifts. My words will be changed. My image will be repainted. My name will be sold. He tells them people will twist his teachings for personal gain. Wars will be fought under his banner. Believers will slaughter other believers while both sides claim divine authority. Nations will rise against nations, each one convinced God stands exclusively with them. Lies will be treated as truth. Truth will be called dangerous. Families will be torn apart by disagreements over things that do not matter. He describes a great darkness falling, not because the light disappears, but because people can no longer recognize his real voice among all the voices, claiming to speak for him. Too many prophets, too many preachers, too many people shouting his name while doing the opposite of everything he taught. The noise drowns out the signal until genuine seekers can't find their way. And then comes the promise that haunts me most. In that hour, I will be found not in temples, but in hearts, not among the proud, but among the broken. My spirit will move where religion cannot reach. This isn't prosperity gospel. This isn't name it and claim it. This is a warning that the system built in his name would become the very thing he came to oppose. The apocalypse. Peter saw. The hidden passage wasn't the only thing Rome suppressed. The Ethiopian church also preserved one of the most complete versions of a text called the Apocalypse of Peter. Fragments of this book existed elsewhere. Scholars knew it had once been widely read, but the Ethiopian version survived intact. And this text makes the book of Revelation look gentle. After the resurrection, Jesus takes Peter to a high mountain, just the two of them. He tells Peter he's going to show him something no other disciple will see. First comes the vision of paradise, light beyond description, joy beyond human capacity, the reward waiting for those who stayed faithful. Then Jesus turns Peter's gaze in another direction, and what Peter sees next breaks him. The punishments are specific, visceral, connected directly to the corruption Jesus just finished warning about. Those who twisted justice and accepted bribes, Peter sees them standing in a river of fire. The flames reach their knees. They scream for relief. None comes. They try to move, but cannot. They are fixed in place, burning without being consumed, forever. Those who bore false witness, Peter sees them chewing their own tongues, biting down again and again, unable to stop, unable to speak. The same tongues that destroyed innocent lives, now destroying themselves. Those who led others astray with false teachings, Peter sees, them surrounded by every soul they deceived. Each victim adds to their torment. The false prophet stands at the center of an ever-growing circle of accusers, crushed by the weight of every lie. Those who persecuted the righteous, Peter sees them hung by their tongues over lakes of burning filth. The same mouths that condemned the innocent, now the source of their endless agony. Women who braided their hair for seduction, men who abandoned their families, children who dishonored parents. Each punishment matches the sin with terrifying precision. Peter weeps. He begs Jesus to show mercy. Jesus tells him the visions serve a purpose. This is what corruption costs. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. This is the actual destination for those who use his name while betraying his teachings. The text directly influenced every artistic depiction of hell that followed. Dante's Inferno, with all its famous circles of punishment, borrowed from this Ethiopian text that Western Christians have never read. But Rome decided it was too disturbing, too graphic, too likely to make people question whether their own religious leaders were headed for the fire. So they buried it. Ethiopia kept copying it. If you're finding this as unsettling as I did when I first discovered these texts, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We dig into hidden history and suppressed scriptures that challenge everything you thought you knew. More revelations coming soon. The books they banned. The Ethiopian Bible preserves texts that Western Christianity explicitly outlawed. The most famous is the Book of Enoch. This text claims to record events before the Great Flood, and what it describes reads like something out of a horror film. A group of angels called the Watchers were stationed above the earth. Their job was simple: observe humanity and report back to heaven. Nothing more. But they watched too long. They saw human women, and something shifted. 200 of them made a pact. They would descend to earth together. They would take human wives. They knew the punishment would be severe. They didn't care. Desire had overwhelmed duty. They landed on Mount Hermon. They chose women from human families, and the children born from these unions were not human. The Nephilim, giants. Some texts say they stood 300 cubits tall, roughly 450 feet. They had appetites that couldn't be satisfied. When the food ran out, they turned on the humans. When the humans were gone, they turned on each other. The Watchers didn't just corrupt humanity through breeding. They taught forbidden knowledge, how to forge weapons for war, how to mix potions and poisons, how to read signs in the sky that were never meant for human eyes, the arts of seduction and sorcery. The world descended into chaos, violence everywhere, blood soaking the ground, humanity crying out for deliverance. So God sent the flood. The waters rose, the Nephilim drowned. Their massive bodies sank beneath the waves. Problem solved? Except it wasn't. Here's the darkest part of the Book of Enoch, the part that explains why Rome wanted this text destroyed. The Nephilim died. Their physical forms perished in the flood, but their spirits didn't. These beings were half angel, half human. They didn't belong fully to either realm. When their bodies died, their spirits had nowhere to go. Heaven was closed to them. Earth no longer had forms for them to inhabit, so they wander, disembodied, furious, hungry. According to the Book of Enoch, these spirits became demons. Every evil spirit tormenting humanity, every dark presence, Every demonic entity, the text claims they are the restless ghosts of the drowned giants, still seeking the pleasures of physical existence, still corrupting everything they touch. The early Western Church quoted this book as scripture. The Epistle of Jude in the New Testament references Enoch by name. Church fathers used it in their teachings. But eventually, Rome decided it raised too many questions about the nature of angels, about the boundaries between heaven and earth, about whether spiritual warfare was real and ongoing rather than metaphorical and resolved. So, they suppressed it, removed it from circulation, acted like it never existed. Ethiopia kept the copies coming, generation after generation, monk after monk, the full text preserved while the rest of the world forgot. Why Rome buried these texts? 3 reasons, and they all come down to power. First, political control. Rome wanted one standardized Bible they could manage. One empire needed one book with one clear message interpreted by one central authority. Different regions reading different texts created chaos, harder to rule, harder to enforce orthodoxy. Standardization made control possible. Second, the mysticism. These Ethiopian texts are filled with visions, angelic encounters, direct experiences of the divine, ordinary believers accessing God without intermediaries. That threatened the church's entire business model. If people could experience God directly through prayer and contemplation, what did they need priests for? What did they need Rome for? Third, and this is the real reason, fear. These passages show Jesus predicting exactly how his church would become corrupt. He described it in detail: the wealth, the hypocrisy, the violence done in his name, the merchants selling his image. If ordinary Christians read these texts, they might start asking uncomfortable questions. They might look at their own church and see the corruption Jesus warned about. They might seek God directly instead of through sanctioned channels. They might realize the institution claiming to represent Christ was the very thing Christ came to oppose. That was an existential threat, so the texts disappeared, the councils made their decisions, the books were removed, and eventually everyone forgot they existed. Everyone except the monks copying manuscripts by candlelight in Ethiopian. Mountain churches. They never stopped. They never forgot. They never obeyed Rome. The secret teaching about reality. Some Ethiopian texts go beyond warnings and prophecies. They contain teachings about the nature of existence itself, ideas so radical the Western Church couldn't allow them to spread. Jesus tells his disciples that the body is like clothing that wears out. You wear it for a time, it serves its purpose. Eventually it falls away. But the spirit continues. The spirit returns home. Death of the body isn't something to fear, but there is something to fear. Jesus calls it the death that walks while the heart still beats. This is the state of being physically alive, but spiritually dead, going through the motions, eating, working, sleeping, looking normal from the outside, but completely hollow within, disconnected from your own soul, lost while still breathing. You can see these people everywhere, eyes open but empty, alive but not living, present but absent, the death that walks. And then the texts get stranger. Some Ethiopian writings sound remarkably like ancient Gnostic philosophy. They speak of 2 realities layered on top of each other. One is the realm of true light, created by the ultimate Father, pure, perfect, eternal. The other is a kind of false world, created by a lesser being. This being emerged from the divine realm, but became separated, confused. In his isolation, he thought he was alone. He thought he was the only God. So he created. He fashioned a physical world that appears beautiful, mountains and oceans, stars and sunsets, bodies that feel pleasure and pain. But this world is mixed, beauty and suffering woven together, truth and lies tangled so tightly you can barely tell them apart. A prison that looks like paradise. Jesus, according to these texts, came to wake people up, not just to forgive sins, not just to provide moral teaching, to show them they're trapped in something like a dream, to reveal the exit, to lead them back to genuine reality. The true light of God exists inside everything, even within the darkness, even within the false world, buried deep, hidden but not destroyed. The task of every soul is to find that hidden spark within themselves and return it to the source. Why Ethiopia? Why did these texts survive in Ethiopia of all places? Ethiopia is one of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth. While empires rose and fell across Europe and Asia, Ethiopia endured. While nearly every other African nation was carved up by colonial powers, Ethiopia stayed free, never conquered, never colonized, their culture intact, their traditions unbroken. But the connection to biblical history runs deeper than independence. According to Ethiopian tradition recorded in the Kebra Nagast, the Queen of Sheba was Ethiopian. Her name was Makeda. When she visited King Solomon in Jerusalem, she was so impressed by his wisdom that she converted to his faith. The story says Solomon and Makeda had a son, Menelik. When Menelik came of age, he traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father. Solomon received him with honor, taught him, blessed him. And when Menelik returned to Ethiopia, he brought something with him: the Ark of the Covenant, the actual Ark. The gold-covered chest containing the original 10 Commandments that Moses received on Mount Sinai. Millions of Ethiopians believe this is literally true. They believe the Ark remains in Ethiopia today, guarded in a small chapel in the ancient city of Axum. Only one priest is allowed to see it. He's appointed for life. He never leaves the grounds. When he dies, another takes his place. This is why Ethiopia never felt obligated to follow Rome's rules about scripture. Their connection to God didn't come through European councils. It came through Solomon and Sheba, through Menelik and the Ark. They had their own ancient covenant. So when Rome said to throw out certain books, Ethiopia refused. These were their texts, their heritage, their direct line to the divine. They weren't about to let anyone edit their faith. The final prophecy. The hidden passage ends with what Ethiopian tradition calls Jesus' final prophecy, his last words before ascending. He tells his disciples that a time will come when love grows cold, not disappears, grows cold. Still present but without warmth, going through the motions of care without actually caring. Faith will become performance, elaborate ceremonies, passionate speeches, emotional displays designed for audiences. But the hearts behind them, empty. The structures built in his name will grow enormous, wealthy beyond imagination, powerful beyond measure, crystal cathedrals, private jets, television empires. But the bigger they grow, the further they drift from everything he taught. In that time, Jesus promises, his spirit will rise again. Not in the cathedrals, not in the denominations, not in the televised spectacles that use his name like a brand. His spirit will move in quiet places, in hospital, rooms at 3 a.m., in prison cells where no one's watching, among the broken, among the grieving, among the ones the world forgot. My spirit will move where religion cannot reach. The proud will not see it, but the broken will. They will know me not through words, but through fire, the fire of awakening, the moment when everything shifts. When the illusions burn away and you suddenly see what actually matters, what was always real beneath the noise. This fire cannot be manufactured by institutions, cannot be scheduled or programmed, cannot be bought or sold or broadcast. It ignites spontaneously in those who are ready, in those who have stopped pretending. Jesus promises that in the last days this fire will spread, not through the powerful, through the powerless, not through the prominent, through the forgotten. The last become first. The silent inherit what the shouting never could. They will sell my image like merchants. They will trade my words like coins. Ethiopian monks preserved these words for 2,000 years, copying by hand, century after century, mountain monastery to mountain monastery, while Rome tried to bury them, while the Western Church pretended they didn't exist. But the passage survived. The warnings still echo. The prophecies continue to unfold, the hidden words of Christ spoken in those 40 days, waiting in the mountains. What you do with them is up to you. If this changed how you see biblical history, subscribe now. We're just getting started. Hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next.